Okay, hello class. Today is the 8th of February, and we are going to be going on to a new lesson. We had just finished up lesson 11 the other week on Friday, and now today on Monday, we are going to be going directly into lesson 12. For us, we are going to be skipping over that opening exercise and exercise 1, and we are going to be going directly into example 2. Exercise 2 is later on. We're going to be going directly into example 2, which is the order of negative integers and their absolute values. So, what example 2 wants us to do is it wants us to draw arrows starting at our dashed line here, which as you can see is going to be represented at 0, to represent each of the integers shown on the number line below. The arrows that correspond with 1 and 2 have already been modeled for us. This is very similar to how we would normally show off our jumps by going like 1, 2. Those are not the best jumps, but you at least understand what I'm getting at. This is very similar to modeling those jumps, except we are going to be modeling them with arrows. And we are going to be doing it like this so that we can draw more than one arrow and they're not going to overlap. So they've already modeled 1 and 2 for us. So you can see our 1 goes from 0 to 1. Our 2 goes from 0 to 2. Goes 1, 2. So, of course, our third one for 3 over here should be going 1, 2, 3 to the right. Our fourth one should be going 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again to the right. And then last on this side, we have our fifth, which is going to be going all the way to 5, which means we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. Now, again, I don't think any of us would really have any difficulty with that. It doesn't really seem too hard. All we're doing is taking our arrows and bringing them all the way over as far to the right as we need to. Starting at 1, then at 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing, but with our negative numbers. With our negative numbers, we're still going to talk about how far we're going, except instead of talking about how far we're going to the right, we're talking about how far we're going to the left. So in order to get to negative 1, I'm going to go 1, but instead of to the right, I'm going to the left. Same thing is going to be going on with negative 2. I'm going to be going 2 to the left. Then I'm going to be going 3 to the left. Then I'm going to be going 4 to the left. And then lastly, I'm going to go 5 to the left. And now that we have all of our arrows drawn, we can make a couple of observations about this. If we want to look at, hey, what's the longest arrows that we drew? Well, obviously, we can look over here and say, oh, well, 5 is definitely our longest arrow. It's 5 units long. But we also have down here, we have our arrow that is representative of negative 5. It's just as long. It's also 5 units long. It just goes in the opposite direction. Instead of going to the right, this one goes to the left. We could say the same thing about what our smallest arrow is. Our smallest arrow is going to be the arrow that's pointing towards 1, but at the same time, our arrow that's pointing towards negative 1 is the exact same size. So it's also our smallest. It just goes in the opposite direction. And yet, if I were to talk about all 5 of these numbers, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, out of all of these, what's my largest number? Let that stew in your heads for a second. And you should hopefully realize that my largest number out of all 5 of those is going to be negative 1. So negative 1 is my largest number, but it's my smallest arrow. On the opposite side, if I were to ask what our smallest number is, our least number, that would be -5. It's our lowest number. And yet it has our largest arrow. That's going to tie into exactly what's written down here. As you approach 0 from the left of our number line, so coming over here and we're approaching 0, our integers are going to increase. -5 to -4, -4 to -3. Our integers are going to increase. But at the same time, our absolute values of those integers, aka that's what's shown by our arrows here. Remember, absolute value is all about distance from 0. The absolute values of those integers are going to decrease because we start with our longest arrow, and our arrow is just going to get smaller as we go along. The absolute value of those integers decreases. This means that the order of our negative integers is going to be the opposite. It's the opposite of the order of their absolute values. And we could show that off using this empty space that we have right here. If I wanted to order my numbers from least to greatest, I would go -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. But if I was talking about their absolute values, and I was talking about order their absolute values from least to greatest, it would be the absolute value of -1, the absolute value of -2, the absolute value of -3, the absolute value of -4, and lastly, the absolute value of -5. As you can see, it's the exact opposite direction, the exact opposite order as the order of negative integers. With that, what we're going to do is move on to exercise 1. Exercise 1 we'll do together, and then you guys will have exercise 2 and the problem set to do on your own. First things first, in exercise 1, what they want us to do is complete the steps below to help us order these numbers. First thing it wants us to do is separate our set of numbers into positive rational numbers, negative rational numbers, and 0 in these top cells below. Our order right now, our order does not matter. So we're going to put all of our negative rational numbers in here and all of our positive rational numbers in here, and they've already put 0 out here in the center on its own. So let's go number by number. Our first one is 2.1. And, well, that's obvious. It doesn't have a negative sign, so it's going to be a positive number. 2.1 goes right over here. -4.5, well, that has a negative sign on it, so it's going to go over here. -6, well, I said it right there, negative, so it's going to go in my negative bin. Let's cross these out as we go. 0.25, well, I didn't say negative, so it's going to go in here. -1.5, well, it's got that negative sign. It's got to go in here. As I mentioned, they already did 0 for us. Put it right here for us. Now we have 3.9. Doesn't have that negative sign, means it's a positive number, 3.9. -6.3. -4, 2 3/4. Okay, well, that doesn't have a negative sign. It's going to go over here. 3.99. And lastly, -9 1/4. That has that negative sign. It's got to come over here. Now what it wants us to do, now that we've listed all of the numbers that we had up there, it wants us to now write the absolute values of our rational numbers in the cell below it. Okay, well, our positive numbers are super easy because the absolute value of a positive number is, well, it doesn't really change. The absolute value of 2.1 is 2.1. Same for 0.25, 3.9, 2 3/4, and 3.99. Finding the absolute value of a negative number isn't that much harder. It's just one tiny step more. As opposed to just leaving the numbers as they are, we need to take that negative sign and get rid of it. So -4/2 is 4/2. Absolute value of -6 is 6. And on and on and on for the rest. And then once again, the absolute value of 0 is going to just stay 0. That's why it doesn't even have its own cell to put in the absolute values. Because the distance from 0 to 0 is 0. They're the exact same thing. There's no difference. So, now that we have our bubbles of numbers, we can go on to actually ordering these things. The first thing it wants us to do is it wants us to order the subset of absolute values from least to greatest. So this is going to be our left subset, and this one's going to be our right, aka our originally negative numbers and our originally positive numbers. So if I wanted to order those numbers from least to greatest, again, you can't see it right now, but good news, hopefully you copied it down so that you can work along with me. If I'm looking at all of those numbers, first thing I'm going to look at is my ones place. And this number that has the smallest ones place is going to be 1.5. So that's going to be my first number, 1.5. Because remember, we're working on our absolute values, not our rational numbers yet. So I have 1.5 coming up first. Then my next smallest number in my ones place is going to be 4. And there's two numbers that have 4 in the ones place. Luckily, one of those numbers is just 4, and the other is 4.5. So 4.5 is obviously going to be larger than 4. So we go 4, 4.5. Up next, the next ones place that is going to be the smallest is going to be 6. And then once again, luckily we have 6 and then 6.3. That 0.3 makes the 6.3 just that much larger. So our order is going to be 6, then 6.3, and then we're left with only one number left, which is going to be 9 1/4. So with that, we've ordered our left side of absolute values from least to greatest. Now, we can do the exact same with our right side of absolute values. So once again, I'm looking for my least number in the ones place, and that's going to be 0 for 0.25. So 0.25 becomes my first number, and then I don't have a 1s in any of my 1s places, so now I have to deal with my 2s. I have 2.1 and 2 and 3/4. Now, the best way to do that is to convert one of them that into either convert them both into decimals or convert them both into fractions. Personally, I would convert them both into decimals because 2 and 3/4 can really easily change to 2.75. And it's pretty easy to see that 2.75 is larger than 2.1, so 2.1 comes first, then 2 and 3/4. Lastly, my other two numbers, I have 3.9 and 3.99. Well, my ones places are the same. My tenths places are the same. They're both 0.9. One of them is 0.99. And that 0.09 that's more is going to just barely make it the larger number. So we have 3.9 and then 3.99. And there's our order for all of our absolute values from left to right. Now what it wants us to do is order each subset of rational numbers from least to greatest. The good news is that my positive rational numbers is going to be exactly the same as my absolute values. So I can just copy down that exact same list, 0.25, 2.1, 2 and 3/4, 3.9, and 3.99. However, for my negative numbers, recall back to that ending of example 2, that large sentence that we have. Hopefully you wrote it down in the space that you have. If not, you can rewind to previously in this video and copy it down from there and then come back to here. We'll give everybody 2 seconds to do that if they didn't. 1, 2. So what we are going to do now is reading that sentence. It says, as you approach 0 from the left on the number line, the integers increase, but the absolute values of those integers decrease. That means that the order of negative integers is opposite the order of their absolute values. So we just put together our order of absolute values. If I'm about to do my negative numbers, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to do the opposite of this list. So my first number is going to be negative 9 and 1/4. Then negative 6.3. And keep following the train backwards. Negative 6, negative 4.5, negative 4, and lastly, negative 1.5. Lastly, for E, it says, okay, now order the entire given set of rational numbers from least to greatest. And here's the good news. We've already done that. We just need to take what we've done in this line and place it down on this line all together as one set. So, negative 9 and 1/4, negative 6.3, negative 6, negative 4 and 1/2, negative 4, negative 1.5. And the reason that we know we already have the correct order is because we know that our negative numbers are always going to be to the left of our positive numbers. So since our numbers were negative, were already to the left of our positive numbers, we knew, well, our order must already be correct. 0.25, 2.1, 2 and 3/4, 3.9, and 3.99. And with that, we've ordered that entire set that they just gave us from least to greatest. Now, of course, do I expect us to do that entire sequence of steps every single time we want to order a set from least to greatest? No, it's not always necessary. But could you do it every single time? Of course, because it will always work. As we get more proficient, we'll have to do this less and less. So with that, this is going to be the end of our video. Your classwork to do independently, as is already posted up on Schoology, is to finish exercise 2, that's parts A through E, and to do the problem sets. That's question 1 and question 2. As per usual, if you need any help on any of those things, just let me know. I'll be sure to join the Teams meeting and help out as best I can. But with that, I hope that you all have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you with another video come tomorrow. Farewell.